My name is Chloe Adams, and I am 22 years old, living in Oakwood Hills, Ohio. My life, for the past year, has revolved around big rigs, the hum of powerful engines, and the satisfying thud of pallets being loaded onto trailers. I drive tractor-trailers for a living, a job that most people probably imagine as a man's world, and they wouldn't be wrong for thinking that. But for me, it is a world I have grown to love, a challenge I embrace every single day. There's something profoundly liberating about being behind the wheel of a 40-ton machine, the open road stretching out before you, the sheer power at your fingertips. It is a demanding job, requiring focus and a steady hand, but it is also deeply rewarding. When I am out on the highway, the world shrinks to the road ahead, and all the little worries of life just melt away. My work is not just about driving, though. It is a mix, a balancing act between the long hauls and the gritty, physical work of the warehouse. Some days are heavier on the driving, delivering shipments across the state, while others are spent mostly inside, operating forklifts, organizing inventory, and preparing outbound loads. It really depends on what our customers need. I like the variety. It keeps things from ever getting boring. It is a small team at our Oakwood Hills branch, just 3 of us, really. There is Brenda, our supervisor, a woman in her late 40s with a no-nonsense attitude and a surprisingly kind heart. She is fair, sharp, and knows the trucking business inside and out. And then there was John Charles, or as everyone just called him, JC. He was our main forklift operator, a man who seemed to take pride in being perpetually grumpy. He was older than me, maybe in his early 30s, and had a way of making every conversation feel like a test he was sure to fail. Even so, we worked closely, and despite his rough edges, we often found ourselves chatting during downtime. It is just what you do in a small workplace. You get to know each other. You share bits and pieces of your lives. I have always been a practical person, a planner. Growing up, I was fascinated by the idea of being prepared for anything, a trait that deepened into a genuine interest in survival skills and what people call prepping. It is not about being paranoid, but about being resilient, self-sufficient, and ready to face whatever life throws at you, big or small. I read books, watched documentaries, and even practiced some basic wilderness skills in my free time. It is a hobby that some find strange, but for me, it is a way of understanding the world and feeling secure. Last Friday, the warehouse was unusually quiet. We had finished all our major tasks early, and Brenda, our supervisor, had left for the day, heading out to an important meeting she couldn't reschedule. So it was just JC and me. The low hum of the warehouse lights our only companion. We had been clearing out a corner of the warehouse, making space for a new shipment, a task that required both of us working together. When we finished, we took a break, leaning against some stacked pallets, just talking. It was the kind of casual conversation that often fills the quiet moments at work. The topic, surprisingly enough, turned to zombie movies. I guess JC had an interest in that sort of thing too, which was a little unexpected given his usual demeanor. We started discussing different scenarios, what we would do in an apocalypse, and my prepping knowledge naturally came up. It was a comfortable, easy conversation, the kind that makes the workday fly by. I mentioned a movie I had seen a while back, one that had a unique take on the zombie genre, but for the life of me, I could not remember the title. I racked my brain, trying to pull it from the depths of my memory, but it just would not come. "Man, I can't remember the name of that movie," I said, frustrated, tapping my finger against my temple. JC leaned back, a rare, almost interested expression on his face. Well, let me know when you do. It sounds like an interesting movie. I shrugged, a small smile on my face. Okay, I'll just text it to you when I remember it, laugh out loud. I meant it as a casual offer, something simple and harmless. We exchanged texts occasionally, mostly work-related, but sometimes just a quick question or a shared funny meme. It was never an issue. Okay, I'll check it out then, JC replied, nodding. And that was it. We continued talking about other things, survival strategies, the best kinds of non-perishable foods, the usual prepper stuff. The conversation drifted, and I thought nothing more of the movie title. The weekend came and went, and it was not until Sunday afternoon, while I was doing laundry, that the movie title popped into my head, clear as day. It was one of those moments when your brain just decides to deliver the information you were searching for. I grabbed my phone, typed out a quick message. That movie I mentioned was called Movie Title Here, and sent it to JC. Then I put my phone down and went back to folding clothes, completely forgetting about it moments later. It was such a trivial thing, a quick follow-up to a casual conversation. I never imagined it would become anything more than that. Monday morning dawned, crisp and cool, a typical autumn day in Oakwood Hills. I arrived at the warehouse early, feeling refreshed and ready for the week. I walked into Brenda's office, ready to discuss the day's schedule, the usual morning routine. We were going over some paperwork, talking about a large inbound shipment, when the door to the office suddenly burst open. It was JC. He stormed in, his face contorted in a furious scowl, his eyes blazing with an intensity I had never seen before. He stopped just outside the office, blocking the doorway, and started yelling. He did not say hello, he did not even acknowledge Brenda. His fury was directed solely at me. "You ruined my life," he shrieked, his voice raw with anger, practically spitting the words. "What the heck is wrong with you? What were you thinking?" I was stunned. My jaw dropped. I literally stood there, frozen, trying to process what was happening. His words made no sense. Ruined his life? What had I done? My mind raced, trying to recall any interaction, any mistake, anything that could have provoked such a violent outburst. But there was nothing. Just the movie title text. It was the only thing I could think of. My heart started pounding in my chest, a cold wave of fear washing over me. I looked at Brenda, my eyes wide with confusion and a hint of panic. She looked just as surprised, but her expression quickly hardened, her gaze fixed on JC. "What are you talking about, JC?" Brenda asked, her voice calm but firm, a stark contrast to his raging. "What is going on here?" He ignored her, his eyes still locked on mine, accusing and full of venom. I told both of you, no contact outside of work. Home stays at home, work stays at work. How many times do I have to say it? You just don't listen, do you, Chloe?" He had told us that it was true. When he first started, he had mentioned that he preferred to keep his personal life separate from work. But it had never been a strict rule, more of a casual preference. We had exchanged maybe half a dozen texts since he started working with us. Little things, nothing personal, and he had never, not once, shown any objection. In fact, he had always replied promptly, even when it was just a quick question about a shared task or a work-related update. So, while he did say it, it was certainly not something that had been strictly enforced or even remembered as a hard boundary. He had agreed just 2 days ago that I could text him the movie title. The suddenness and intensity of his anger were completely baffling. Then he continued, his voice still shaking with rage. My wife saw your text. She packed her bags this morning. She's gone because of you, Chloe, because of your stupid text. The words hit me like a physical blow. His wife had seen my text and left him. My mind reeled. The casual, harmless text about a movie title leading to this. It seemed utterly impossible, completely disproportionate. I felt a wave of nausea. My stomach clenched and my eyes welled up with tears. I did not understand. How could a movie title text cause someone's wife to pack her bags and leave? It just did not make any sense. But his conviction, his raw fury, made me question everything. Was I truly responsible? Had I done something terribly wrong without realizing it? The thought made my chest ache and a sob caught in my throat. I stood there, trembling, unable to speak, tears streaming down my face. Brenda stepped forward, her voice cutting through the tension. JC, that's enough. You are out of line. This is a workplace and you cannot speak to Chloe like this. But JC was beyond reasoning. He continued to rant, his anger spiraling out of control. He kept blaming me, reiterating that I had ruined his life, that I had betrayed his trust. He was not violent, but his hostility was palpable, a thick, oppressive cloud in the small office. It was clear he was not going to calm down. I was a mess, sobbing uncontrollably, completely overwhelmed by his accusations and the feeling that I had somehow caused this immense drama. I need to go, I choked out, unable to bear it anymore. My vision was blurry from tears and my head felt light. I just wanted to escape, to be anywhere but there. Brenda, seeing my state, nodded. Go home, Chloe. Take some time. We'll talk later. She gave me a sympathetic look, a silent promise of support. I mumbled a thanks and practically ran out of the office, grabbing my bag and keys and leaving the warehouse in a blur. I drove home on autopilot, tears streaming down my face the whole way. I felt a crushing weight of guilt, even though a part of me knew it was illogical. How could a single, innocent text cause such a catastrophe? But his words, "You ruined my life," echoed in my ears, making me doubt my own sanity. I spent the rest of the day in a haze of misery, replaying the conversation, trying to find where I had gone wrong. Later that afternoon, my phone rang. It was Brenda. Her voice was calm and reassuring. Chloe, I need you to come back to work for a bit, just us. We need to talk this through. Reluctantly, I agreed. I still felt shaky, but I trusted Brenda. When I got back, the warehouse was empty except for her. She sat me down in her office, offered me a cup of tea, and listened patiently as I recounted everything, from the casual conversation about zombie movies to JC's explosive outburst. I explained how casual our texts had always been, how he had seemed perfectly fine with the idea of me texting him the movie title. I told her how guilty I felt, how I kept replaying it in my head, wondering if I had missed something, if I had somehow crossed an unspoken line. As I spoke, the tears started flowing again, fresh and hot. Brenda let me finish. Then she reached across the desk and gently squeezed my hand. Chloe, she said softly, her eyes kind and steady, this is not your fault, not in the slightest. You sent a text with a movie title. That is it. There is absolutely no reason for his wife to have packed her bags over that unless there were already serious, deeper issues in their marriage. And believe me, there were. Her words were like a lifeline. Slowly, I started to breathe easier. She explained that after I left, JC had continued his tirade, his behavior becoming more and more aggressive, though still not violent. He was so hostile that Brenda had no choice but to send him home for the day. She told me the manager had been informed and that they were taking his behavior very seriously. It was clear that they were on my side, that they did not blame me. Brenda said JC had been ranting about how he had told us to keep work and home separate, how he wanted nothing to do with us outside of the job. He had repeatedly emphasized, home stays at home, work stays at work. And that is when Brenda's eyes glinted with a mischievous spark. "You know what, Chloe," she said, a small smile playing on her lips. "JC wants nothing to do with us outside of work. He wants home to stay at home and work to stay at work. Fine, we'll give him exactly what he wants." My brow furrowed. "What do you mean?" "From now on," Brenda explained, her voice firm, "you are only to discuss work-related topics with JC, no personal banter, no jokes, no catching up on life, no asking about his weekend. Nothing. Unless it is absolutely necessary for the job, you do not interact with him. And I am going to do the exact same thing. We will be strictly professional, completely by the book. He wants to separate home and work. We will separate them with a concrete wall." The idea slowly dawned on me. It was brilliant. It was subtle. It was petty. And it was exactly what he claimed he wanted. The guilt that had been weighing me down began to lift, replaced by a surprising surge of something else, determination. I had been made to feel like the villain, but now I had a chance to flip the script, to show him the consequences of his own demands. "Okay," I said, a slow smile spreading across my face. "Okay, I can do that." I felt a quiet sense of purpose, a newfound resolve. The problem he created was not my fault, and now I would not allow it to be my burden either. I would give him precisely the cold, impersonal work environment he insisted upon and see how he liked it. I was ready. Act 2. They try to solve the problem but fail, making it worse. The next day, I woke up feeling a little better, but still emotionally drained from the previous day's ordeal. Brenda had suggested I take the day off to let things settle, and I readily agreed. I needed the space, the quiet time to process everything that had happened. Even though Brenda had assured me it was not my fault, a part of me still wrestled with the lingering tendrils of guilt. It is hard to shake off the feeling that you have inadvertently caused someone pain, especially when they are so vehement in their accusations. I spent the day trying to distract myself, reorganizing my prepping supplies, doing some light exercise, anything to keep my mind from replaying JC's angry face. I knew in my rational mind that his wife leaving was a symptom of deeper issues, not caused by a simple movie text. But the emotional impact of being yelled at so unfairly, of being blamed for such a significant life event, lingered like a bad taste. That day off was helpful, but returning to work was still daunting. The following morning, as I pulled into the parking lot, my stomach churned with a mixture of apprehension and resolve. I took a deep breath, reminding myself of Brenda's plan: professionalism. No personal interaction. This was not about me anymore. It was about holding a boundary that he himself had demanded. I walked into the warehouse, past Brenda's office, and started my usual morning routine, checking the incoming shipment manifest and preparing the forklifts. JC arrived a few minutes later, looking sullen and unkempt. He avoided eye contact, trudging directly to his locker. The atmosphere in the warehouse was immediately thick with unspoken tension. Our first interaction was unavoidable. We needed to discuss the layout for the new shipment. "Good morning, JC," I said, my voice deliberately neutral, keeping my tone strictly business. "I've gone over the manifest for the inbound. We'll need to clear out aisles 5 and 6 to accommodate the oversized crates. Do you want to start by moving the smaller pallets from 5 to 3, or go straight for the larger ones in 6? He grunted, not even looking at me. Whatever, just tell me what you need. His voice was flat, devoid of any warmth. I just did, I replied, my own voice remaining even. Aisles 5 and 6. Smaller pallets first from 5, then the larger ones from 6. Unless you have a more efficient method you'd like to propose. I kept my eyes fixed on the clipboard in my hand, making it clear that this was a professional inquiry, not an invitation for a personal response. He mumbled something unintelligible, then stalked off towards his forklift. It was awkward, stiff, and utterly devoid of the usual workplace banter. This was the first taste of the new normal. The usual quick jokes, the shared frustrations over a jammed pallet, the casual questions about the weekend, all gone. Each interaction felt like walking on eggshells, a delicate dance around an invisible wall. But I was committed. As the day progressed, JC's behavior didn't improve. If anything, he seemed to relish the coldness, taking it as an opportunity to further distance himself, yet at the same time, subtly making things more difficult. He started neglecting small details that would normally be part of our unspoken collaborative effort. For instance, if I was preparing a load and needed a specific type of pallet that was out of reach, he would not offer to grab it with his forklift like he used to. I would have to formally request it, stating the exact dimensions and quantity, as if we were strangers. If I needed a stack of empty pallets for an outgoing shipment, he would wait until I explicitly asked, even if he was driving past them with an empty fork. It was not overtly aggressive, not yelling or screaming, but a passive-aggressive stonewalling that slowly, subtly, increased my workload and made my job harder. It was infuriating. One afternoon, I was struggling to maneuver a particularly heavy crate by hand, trying to get it onto a pallet jack. It was just within the weight limit for manual handling, but it was awkward and unwieldy. JC drove his forklift right past me, clearly seeing my struggle, and did not offer to help. Normally, he would have, or at least asked if I needed a hand. But this time, he just kept going, his face impassive. I felt a surge of frustration so strong I had to bite my tongue. I gritted my teeth and muscled the crate into place myself, feeling a dull ache in my shoulders afterward. This was his way of getting back at me, of making me pay, simply by withholding the informal cooperation that makes a workplace run smoothly. He was taking advantage of the work stays at work rule to be unhelpful without technically breaking any rules. I knew he was doing it on purpose. It was not just an oversight, it was a deliberate choice to make my life just a little bit harder, a way to show his resentment without breaking his own self-imposed rule of no personal contact. He would often make snide remarks, carefully worded to sound like work-related criticisms, but delivered with a cutting edge that was clearly personal. "Is that pallet secured properly, Chloe? We wouldn't want another incident." The incident clearly referring to his wife leaving. Or, "Are you sure you understand the dimensions for this load? We can't afford any surprises." Every other word seemed to be a veiled accusation or a petty jab. It was exhausting, constantly having to parse his words for hidden meanings to ensure I did not rise to his bait. My once comfortable and enjoyable workplace slowly transformed into a minefield. I found myself tensing up every time I heard the distinct hum of his forklift approaching. I would plan my movements around the warehouse to avoid crossing paths with him unless absolutely necessary. I started eating my lunch in my truck, rather than in the break room, just to avoid his presence. The ease and camaraderie that had once defined our small team vanished, replaced by a chilling silence and an underlying tension that made every hour feel like an eternity. I was doing my part, maintaining strict professionalism, but it felt like I was the only one. He was using the rules to torment me, twisting them to his advantage, making me feel isolated and punished. Brenda noticed, of course. She saw the change in atmosphere, the subtle ways JC was making things difficult. She tried to intervene gently at first. JC, could you give Chloe a hand with that? She would ask, or let's make sure we're all working together efficiently. But JC would just nod stiffly or give a curt, yes, supervisor, and then proceed to do the bare minimum or find a way to delay his help until I had almost finished the task myself. He was technically complying, but his attitude screamed defiance. Brenda pulled me aside one afternoon, her brow furrowed with concern. Chloe, how are you holding up? He's really pushing it, isn't he? I sighed, running a hand through my hair. It's exhausting, Brenda. I'm doing exactly what we talked about, being completely professional, but he's taking advantage. He's making my job harder, and he's constantly making these little comments. It feels like I'm constantly walking on eggshells. I love this job, you know. I really do. But I dread coming in every morning. It's draining. Brenda nodded, her lips pressed into a thin line. I see it, and the manager sees it too. We've had a few talks with him about his attitude, his cooperation, even his subtle insubordination. But he just keeps repeating his mantra. Work stays at work, home stays at home, and claims he's just being professional, like he was asked to be. He's twisted it, used it as a shield to justify his behavior. He thinks he's so clever. Her voice held a note of genuine frustration. He's making a mockery of the very boundary he imposed. The situation was indeed getting worse. JC's passive aggression escalated. He started forgetting to pass on crucial information about incoming deliveries or misplacing manifests, causing delays and forcing me to scramble to find the correct paperwork. He would leave his forklift in inconvenient spots, blocking aisles, knowing full well it would inconvenience me. When I would ask him to move it, he would give a slow, deliberate response, making me wait for an unnecessary amount of time. He was making my life at work a living hell, chipping away at my patience and my love for the job, one petty act at a time. It felt like a constant battle, a silent war of attrition. The camaraderie that once existed, however fragile, between all of us was completely shattered. Brenda tried her best to mediate, to encourage JC to be a team player, but he was obstinate. He was determined to make me pay, to make me feel the weight of his ruined life. And he was succeeding. I found myself becoming more withdrawn, my usual energetic self replaced by a weary, cautious version of myself. The joy I once found in driving the big rigs, in the physical demands of the warehouse, began to diminish under the relentless pressure of JC's hostility. I started thinking about leaving. It was a painful thought, a betrayal of my own passion. I had worked so hard to get this job, to prove myself in a male-dominated industry. I loved the feel of the road, the challenge of maneuvering the huge trucks, the satisfaction of a job well done. But the constant tension, the emotional toll of dealing with JC's subtle bullying was becoming unbearable. Every morning, I would wake up with a knot in my stomach, dreading the day ahead. I started taking longer routes on my deliveries, just to have more time away from the warehouse, away from him. My productivity was suffering, not because I was slacking, but because I was constantly on edge, constantly having to navigate around his deliberate non-cooperation. One evening, after another particularly draining day, I sat in my truck, parked in my driveway, too exhausted to even go inside. I put my head on the steering wheel, the hum of the engine the only sound. Tears pricked at my eyes again, not tears of guilt this time, but tears of frustration and despair. I felt defeated. I was doing everything right, following Brenda's advice, upholding the professional boundary, but JC was still winning. He was still making me miserable. This job, my dream job, was slowly being poisoned by his bitterness. I thought about polishing my resume, about looking for other trucking companies, even though the thought of starting over, of losing the comfortable rhythm I had built here, was agonizing. This was my lowest point. All my efforts to simply exist peacefully, to maintain professional dignity, felt futile. It seemed all was truly lost. I just wanted the nightmare to end. Act 3. They make a final attempt to solve the problem, which may succeed or fail. The consequence is not always as expected. The next morning, I arrived at the warehouse with that familiar knot in my stomach, but also with a new sense of resolve. I had spent the entire evening thinking, truly thinking, about my options. Quitting was still on the table, but the idea filled me with a deeper sense of failure. Why should I be forced out of a job I loved because of someone else's bitterness and immaturity? Brenda had said JC was twisting the rules, using them to his advantage, and she was right. He had demanded a strict work-only environment, and then, when he got it, he abused it to make my life harder. This was not about my text anymore. It was about his desire to control and punish. I decided I would not let him win. I would not let him drive me away. When I walked into Brenda's office, she looked up, her expression a mix of concern and determination. "Good morning, Chloe. How are you feeling today?" "Tired," I admitted, "but I'm not giving up. I'm not letting him win. I'm going to keep upholding the boundary even if he makes it impossible." Brenda nodded slowly. "I appreciate your resolve, Chloe, but you shouldn't have to suffer for his behavior. The manager and I had a long discussion last night. His performance has been slipping, not just in attitude, but in his actual work. He's slow, uncooperative, and his professionalism is a thin veil for his constant undermining. We've reached a decision." She paused, a glint in her eye that reminded me of our conversation when she first suggested the work stays at work rule. "You took yesterday off, remember?" "Yes," I said, wondering where she was going with this. "Well," she continued, a sly smile spreading across her face, "today the manager and I are implementing the rule properly. JC wants work stays at work without exceptions. Fine, he's going to get it. No personal greetings, no asking about his weekend, no casual pleasantries whatsoever. Not from me, not from the manager, not from anyone. Only direct, essential work instructions. No banter, no jokes, no friendly nods, no eye contact beyond what is necessary to convey a task. Total, unyielding, professional isolation. He complained about a text that ruined his life because we were too friendly outside of work. We'll be so unfriendly inside work, he won't know what hit him." A slow, triumphant smile spread across my face. This was it, the full, unadulterated version of his own twisted demand. He had thought he could use it as a weapon, but Brenda was turning it into a cage for him. "He won't like that," I said, a sense of vindication washing over me. "He certainly won't," Brenda agreed, her smile widening. "He wants professional. He'll get robotic. We've had enough of his antics. We're giving him exactly what he asked for, but in a way he never anticipated. We're going to starve him of the very social interaction he believes he's entitled to, even as he demands its absence. He thrives on being a grumpy victim, but we're taking away his audience, his targets. He's going to be talking to a wall of pure, unadulterated work-related instruction. Brenda explained the plan. While I would maintain my strict professional distance, she and the manager would be the primary enforcers. They would be relentless in their adherence to the new, chillingly literal interpretation of JC's demand. They would speak to him only when necessary, about tasks, about logistics, about safety regulations. No, how was your morning? No, rough day, huh? No acknowledgement of his presence beyond his utility as a forklift operator. It was a bold, risky move, but one that Brenda believed was necessary to break his cycle of petty aggression. The next day, I was scheduled for a long delivery route, which meant I would be out of the warehouse for most of the day. It was perfect. It meant I would not be directly involved in the initial implementation of this new, extreme policy, and it would give JC no one to direct his usual subtle barbs at, leaving him entirely to Brenda and the manager's cold professionalism. I left for my route, my mind buzzing with anticipation. I imagined Brenda and the manager, their faces unreadable, delivering instructions to JC with a precision and lack of warmth that would make him squirm. I imagined the silence, the void where casual pleasantries and personal remarks used to be. It was a brilliant move, a true poetic justice. He had sought to punish me for a perceived boundary violation, twisting a minor interaction into a personal catastrophe. Now, he would be isolated by the very boundary he had insisted upon, a boundary applied with such unwavering stringency that it would strip away any semblance of human connection. My phone rang as I was halfway through my route. It was Brenda. Her voice was calm, almost amused. "Well, Chloe," she said, "you're not going to believe what happened." My heart skipped a beat. What, did he blow up again? No, she chuckled softly. Even better, he quit. I almost swerved off the road. He quit, seriously. Seriously, less than 5 hours into his shift today, Brenda explained, and I could hear the satisfaction in her voice. The manager and I were here just like we planned. We gave him the full treatment. No wasted words, no pleasantries, just, "JC, aisle 4 needs to be cleared. JC, this shipment needs to be prepped for 2 o'clock. JC, ensure your forklift is parked in the designated area." Nothing else. He tried to make small talk, tried to complain about something unrelated, but we just gave him blank stares and redirected him to the next task. No engagement. Zero. He kept trying to bait us to get a reaction, but we just kept it strictly work. It was beautiful. Brenda went on, recounting the morning. JC had clearly expected a continuation of the subtle antagonism, or perhaps even a return to normal interaction. But he was met with a wall of professional silence. He tried to crack jokes, hoping for a laugh, but Brenda and the manager remained impassive. He tried to complain about the heat, but they just told him to take a water break as per policy. He tried to bring up his personal life, hinting at his struggles, but they simply nodded and directed him to a pallet that needed stacking. He was starved of the emotional reaction he craved, the fuel for his victim complex. He wanted a reaction, and he got none. He just couldn't take it, Brenda continued, a note of triumph in her voice. He walked into my office about an hour ago, handed me his keys, and said, "I can't work in this atmosphere. This is ridiculous." And he just walked out, didn't even look back, said he found another job where people are normal and friendly. Can you believe it? He created this atmosphere, and then he couldn't stand it. A wave of profound relief washed over me. It was over. He was gone. The tension that had been a constant companion for weeks suddenly evaporated. The weight lifted from my shoulders, and I felt a lightness I had not experienced in a long time. It was a brilliant, almost poetic victory. He had demanded a purely professional environment, and when he was given it, truly, without any personal buffer, he crumbled. He could not stand the very isolation he had sought to impose on others. He thrives on drama and attention, and when that was removed, he had no foundation to stand on. When I returned to the warehouse the next day, the difference was immediate and palpable. The air felt lighter, clearer. The oppressive tension was gone. Brenda was humming as she worked, and the manager even cracked a joke with me. There was a quiet hum of efficiency, a sense of peace that had been absent for far too long. My love for the job, for the trucks, and the warehouse surged back with renewed vigor. I could focus on my work again, on the satisfying rhythm of loading and unloading, without constantly looking over my shoulder or bracing myself for the next petty jab. The place felt like home again, a place of work, yes, but also a place of respect and camaraderie. Brenda and I talked about it a lot in the days that followed. We wondered what really happened with JC's wife. Was it truly just my text that pushed her over the edge? Or was it, as Brenda had suspected, the final straw in a marriage already crumbling under the weight of JC's own bitterness? His inability to connect with people, his constant need for a target for his frustrations. We never really knew, of course. He was a closed book, and now he was gone. But Brenda and I both agreed that it was highly unlikely a single, innocent text could dismantle a stable relationship. It was more likely that his wife finally had enough of his temperament, his blaming, his inability to take responsibility for his own issues. My text was just a convenient scapegoat, a flashpoint for a deeper, simmering resentment in his personal life. The whole experience had changed me, too. It had forced me to confront the uncomfortable truth that even when you do nothing wrong, you can become the target of someone else's misplaced anger. But it also taught me the power of holding your ground, of setting boundaries, and of having supportive allies. I realized that my initial guilt was unfounded, a product of his manipulation. I had grown stronger, more resilient. I had learned to trust my instincts and to lean on the people who had my back. I was incredibly grateful for Brenda, for her unwavering support, her keen insight, and her brilliant, utterly devastating plan that gave JC exactly what he deserved, exactly what he asked for. Life at the Oakwood Hills warehouse returned to its efficient, peaceful rhythm. We soon hired a new forklift operator, a young woman named Maria who was bright, eager, and surprisingly good-humored. The team felt complete again, even better than before. As for JC, we never heard from him again. He just vanished like a bad dream. And in a way, that was the greatest revenge of all, not just for me, but for the peaceful, respectful workplace he had tried so hard to destroy. He wanted work to stay at work, and now, for him, work was nowhere at all.